TV headlines. In Afghanistan, eyewitnesses say U.S. soldiers burned the bodies of 4 little girls after killing 17 civilians in their beds. American assassination drones kill over 60 people in Yemen in 3 days. And in Spain, hundreds of thousands take to the streets in 60 cities to protest newly approved austerity measures. 5:30 a.m. here in the Iranian capital of Tehran. Welcome to Press TV's World News. Our top story for this hour: at least 17 civilians, including 9 children, have been shot dead by U.S. soldiers in southern Afghanistan. The bloodshed took place in 3 villages in the Panjwai district of Kandahar province. The Taliban claim at least 50 people were killed in the rampage. Villagers say the U.S. forces gathered 11 bodies, including those of 4 girls below the age of 6, and set fire to them.
They killed a child who was 2 years old. Was this child a Taliban? There is no Taliban here. The Americans are always threatening us with dogs and helicopters during night raids.
Right after the killings, locals gathered outside one of the U.S. bases in southern Afghanistan. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has condemned the attack, calling it an inhuman and intentional act. He has also demanded an explanation. U.S. President Barack Obama called Karzai following the shooting. He has promised a probe into the killings. There's been no word on the motive behind the attack. Well, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul has issued a statement of condolence over the killing of Afghan civilians by American forces.
We're saddened by this violent act against our Afghan friends. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and their entire community.
Acting U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan James Cunningham, however, stopped short of apologizing to the Afghan people and government. Cunningham said the incident is under investigation. The spokesman of NATO's International Security Assistance Force in Kabul has confirmed the killing of Afghan civilians by American troops. Brigadier General Karsten Jacobson claims the massacre was carried out by a lone American soldier.
On innocent civilians, then returned to his base and was taken into custody, and he is now in U.S. custody, and the investigation into this case, his reasons, has started.
Unified protector.
NATO's Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen has also expressed shock and sadness over the shooting. 17 Afghans, including 9 children, and 3 women were killed when U.S. soldiers entered the homes of civilians in southern Kandahar province on Sunday. Neither the U.S. nor NATO officials have apologized for the incident so far. Afghan President Hamid Karzai says his country will ink a strategic pact with the U.S. ahead of the NATO summit in Chicago in May.
This agreement would not include the U.S. military bases in Afghanistan. After 1 year, the 2 sides would discuss modalities as how to use bases and other facilities. If agreed, then another deal would be inked.
Karzai said that a halt to night raids by U.S.-led forces is one of the preconditions for signing the deal. He said his government is careful about securing Afghanistan's national interests and sovereignty. He also noted that the Afghan government has the right to buy military equipment from any country, including India, Russia, China, and Poland. Karzai added that the U.S. and its allies will provide over $4 billion in aid every year after their complete withdrawal from Afghanistan. Around 130,000 foreign forces, including some 90,000 Americans, are expected to be pulled out by the end of 2014. A law firm is set to take legal action against British Foreign Secretary William Hague, this over his alleged complicity in the U.S. assassination drone strikes in Pakistan. London-based law firm Lee Day & Co. says it has credible evidence that Hague oversaw a policy of passing British intelligence to American forces. The firm will issue formal proceedings against Hague on behalf of the family of the Pakistani man killed last year. Malik Duat Khan was part of a local Jirgaur council of elders. A U.S. drone fired a missile that hit him while he was holding a meeting in northwestern Pakistan. Washington has officially admitted to carrying out airstrikes in Pakistan. The attacks have resulted in growing anti-American sentiment in the country. Well, U.S. drones have killed over 60 people in the Yemeni provinces of Baida and Abyan. Over the past few days, the latest casualties have been reported in Abyan province. 5 missiles reportedly hit an area in the city of Jar, killing 3 people. Witnesses say a U.S. drone and 2 F-16 warplanes were spotted in the area before the attack. An additional 59 people were killed on Friday and Saturday. The Yemeni government says those killed were militants. However, local residents have dismissed the claim. They also reject claims that the raids were carried out by the Yemeni military. They say U.S. aircraft were responsible for the attacks. While in Spain, people have taken to the streets to protest the government's labor reforms aimed at tackling the soaring unemployment. Authorities have criticized both the protest and its timing. Press TV's Guy Hedgeko reports from Madrid.
Spain's 2 biggest unions led Sunday's protest march through central Madrid, with left-leaning political parties and social groups also taking part. Similar protests were held in cities across Spain against the Conservative government's economic policy, in particular its new labour reform, which makes hiring and firing easier.
It's the worst labor reform in the Spanish democracy and one of the worst in Europe.
The unions say this action was their only alternative after the government pushed ahead with the labour reform without negotiating its terms.
But besides this protest, March 11th is an important date for many Spaniards for a very different reason. It's the anniversary of the 2004 terrorist attack which killed nearly 200 people here in Madrid. Every year that anniversary is marked with a tribute to the victims. But the decision to stage the protest on this year's anniversary sparked controversy, with the government accusing unions of exploiting the sensitive date. While the main tribute to the victims of the train bombings went ahead in Madrid, other events were delayed until Monday. The Popular Party government has also criticised the protest itself. It says Spaniards should unite to get the economy back on track again, instead of taking to the streets, and that the labour reform is necessary to tackle Spain's jobless rate of 23%. But those protesting say the new law is counterproductive.
And the employers have all the power to establish all the conditions of the labour market. Okay, salaries, working conditions, economic situation of the workers. So it is like the Middle Ages. It's like going backwards like a century.
Okay, we don't agree with the fact that the government is taking advantage of this situation to make the people pay for the crisis.
Sunday's demonstration is the latest in a series of protests against the economic policy of Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, and more are expected, with union leaders organising a general strike against the labour reform for March 29th. Guy Hedgeko, Press TV, Madrid.
Egypt's parliament has voted to start the process of a no-confidence vote in the ruling military government. This has further deepened the political tension as the military has been accused of trying to slow down the transition to civilian rule and consolidate its grip on power. Press TV's Karim Gamaluddin reports from Cairo.
The Egyptian parliament moved to withdraw confidence from the military-appointed government of Prime Minister Kamal Ganzouri, a move that will pile pressure on the country's ruling junta to appoint a new cabinet likely to be headed by the Muslim Brotherhood.
The government's performance is very poor. It has not acted in concert with the parliament. It has also failed to meet the demands of the people.
Sunday's move by the People's Assembly was sparked by the departure of the American defendants accused of using illegal foreign funds to foment unrest in Egypt.
Egypt's revolution took the whole world by surprise, especially the Americans. Americans. So when the American NGO organizations spend around $192 million in Cairo, we believe this must be war.
The exit of the Americans kicked off a storm in Egypt, prompting many to accuse the Supreme Council of Armed Forces of bowing to U.S. pressure and intervening in the work of the Egyptian judiciary. During Sunday's parliamentary session, hundreds of protesters demonstrated outside the parliament to call for the dismissal of the current interim government and replacing it with a new cabinet which would work on achieving the demands and objectives of the Egyptian revolution.
Members of the parliament say this move will add pressure on the ruling army generals to appoint a new cabinet led by the Muslim Brotherhood, which represents around 47% of the Egyptian parliament. Karim Gamaluddin, Press TV, Cairo.
Well, you're watching Press TV's World News. Time for a reminder of our headlines for this hour. In Afghanistan, eyewitnesses say U.S. soldiers burned the bodies of 4 little girls after killing 17 civilians in their beds. American assassination drones kill over 60 people in Yemen in 3 days. And in Spain, hundreds of thousands take to the streets in 60 cities to protest newly approved austerity measures. Still to come later on in the bulletin, Japan marks the first anniversary of the deadly earthquake and tsunami. Stay with us for details on that and more when we return.
According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Afghanistan is sitting on $1 trillion of natural resources.
نو تو فکر ورته وکړه دغه اولادو ته زه دغه 15,000 روپۍ دغه خلکو ته زه دوی ته چی واخلم وایم چې دغه ګوټک نه چې واخته شلې نور راوتل دي د خدای په لاس کې دي.
The road to recovery will be long. It will be expensive and it will be treacherous. But with a little bit of luck and a good amount of foresight, they may be able to tap this enormous resource in a manner that elevates not just the country's minerals, but also its people.
Welcome back, everybody. Israeli warplanes have attacked Gaza once again, this time injuring at least 27 Palestinians. Press TV has learned that 9 children are among the injured. Tel Aviv has stepped up its attacks on Gaza in recent days. Up to 18 Palestinians have lost their lives since Friday. Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu has defended the airstrikes. He has praised the Israeli armed forces for the attacks and promised that they will continue. Health officials in Gaza have warned that many patients with chronic diseases are facing imminent death due to the lack of medicine. Press TV's Ashraf Shannon reports from Gaza.
The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza has warned of health crisis in Gaza due to the Palestinian Authority's refusal to transfer medicine and hospital supplies to the people of Gaza. Gaza's health ministry stock has run out of nearly half of its essential drugs needed for blood cancer patients, epilepsy, drugs required for women and children, in addition to surgery and hospital supplies.
The Ramallah government bears a big responsibility for the health crisis in Gaza, as it refuses to transfer the badly needed medicine to Gaza. All shipments of medicine from donor countries go directly to the central storage facilities in Ramallah, including Gaza's share of medicines. But Ramallah does not allow it to reach Gaza for political reasons.
Those at the highest risk are cancer and renal failure patients. Patients appealed for help as their health is deteriorating due to lack of medicine.
We are calling on all the free people of the world to help us. We are in a bad need for our medicine and the special filters to keep us alive. Without the medicine, we are dying a slow death. Renal patients are at high risk because we need to clean our blood every 2 days.
At the Rantisi Pediatric Hospital, where dozens of Gazan children are treated for chronic illnesses, ranging from cancer to renal failure, hospital officials said their stock of medicine has almost depleted.
Our hospital specializes in treating children who suffer from cancer, renal failure, and different life-threatening diseases. In this hospital, more than 50 medicines which are needed to treat the children are nowhere to be found, in addition to many hospital supplies.
With the ongoing Israeli blockade and the Ramallah government's refusal to deliver medicines to Gaza, chronically ill patients say they are caught between a rock and a hard place. Medical experts warn that because of lack of necessary medicines, patients could face an imminent death unless they receive the necessary treatment on time. The situation here is worse, especially for chronically ill patients who have to be on medication for long. Ashraf Shannon, Press TV Gaza.
Turkish activists have staged a protest in the capital Ankara to condemn Israel's latest airstrikes in Gaza. This comes as Turkey's foreign ministry has also called on Israel to stop disproportionate attacks on Palestinians. Press TV's Mehdi Gholizadeh reports from Ankara.
A group of Turkish activists have held a protest near the Israeli embassy in Ankara to condemn Israel's recent deadly strikes on the Gaza Strip. The protesters said the Israeli airstrikes target civilians in the coastal sliver. They stated that the U.S. has spoiled Israel by its support. The activists said the U.S. support for Israel is a main factor that has emboldened Israel to commit moves that are in violation of international law. The protest was organized by the Association of Human Rights and Solidarity for Oppressed People, which in its statement condemned Israel's stance towards Palestinians in Gaza.
We are here to protest against the Israeli airstrikes targeting Palestinians, and we want to say that our reaction will continue as long as Israel continues its oppression and occupation.
The activists called on the international community not to remain silent in the face of the Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip.
We call on the international community to take necessary measures to stop these brutal attacks. We want to say that our country will not be an accomplice to these crimes.
The activists called on Israel to stop its unacceptable policies towards the Gaza Strip. The Turkish activists' move to condemn the Israeli strikes on Gaza comes as Turkey's foreign ministry, in a statement, described the attacks on Palestinians in Gaza as indiscriminate and disproportionate. Turkey's foreign ministry, in its statement, also voiced deep concern about the escalation of violence in the Gaza Strip. The statement called on the international community not to remain indifferent to these strikes and to take necessary measures for an urgent end to the tension in Gaza. Turkey's foreign ministry also called on Israel to end its unacceptable policies towards Gaza. Relations between Turkey and Israel hit rock bottom in 2010 after Israeli forces attacked a Gaza-bound humanitarian flotilla and killed 9 Turkish nationals. Ankara has repeatedly stated that Israel should apologize for the attack and pay compensation to the families of the victims before the normalization of bilateral ties. Israel has so far refused to agree with these conditions. Mehdi Gholizadeh, Press TV, Ankara.
Joint UN Arab League envoy to Syria, Kofi Annan, says he has presented a set of concrete proposals to help the situation in Syria and end the unrest there.
It's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult, but we have to have hope. I am optimistic. I'm optimistic for several reasons. First of all, I've been here for a very short period. Almost every Syrian I've met wants peace. They want the violence to stop. They want to move on with their lives. I presented a set of proposals, concrete proposals to the president, which will have a real impact on the ground once it is agreed. It will help launch the process, and it would also help the crisis on the ground.
He made the remarks after a second day of talks with President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. During the first round of talks, the Syrian president described political dialogue as meaningless as long as terrorist groups operate in Syria. Assad said these groups are creating chaos and seeking to destabilize the country.
Former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan's mission was to find a common ground between the Syrian government and oppositions. On his second day in Syria, Annan met with Mufti of the Republic Sheikh Ahmed Badruddin Hassoun, where they discussed the Syrian unrest and the clergy point of view. Afterwards, he met with opposition figures. One of them was lawyer Hassan Abdulazim, who previously had several meetings with U.S. Ambassador Robert Ford. Abdulazim listed to Annan several demands and recommendations.
Syrian government acceptance for Kofi Annan's proposal towards finding a solution for the unrest showed its readiness to help him fulfill the aim of his mission.
In his meeting with Annan, President Assad insisted that as long as there will be terrorist acts and chaos in the country, it will be hard to find a political solution.
Kofi Annan's meeting with opposition figures, clergy, and his two meetings with the president assured that this can actually help finding a solution to solve the unrest, as long as there will be no foreign intervention or help in whatsoever from foreign countries to armed groups.
Former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan came to Syria knowing that his job will not be an easy one. However, he expressed optimism after meeting President Bashar al-Assad. Rahshan Saglam, Press TV, Damascus.
The second court session looking into the biggest fraud case in Iran has come to an end. The lawyer of one of the main defendants quit for ethical reasons, and a second indictment was read out in court. Arash Ghalatbari has more.
The second session of the biggest fraud case trial in Iran. At this stage, 32 people are standing trial in the huge corruption case. Approximately $2.6 billion was obtained through letter of credit fraud. The letters of credit were opened by various banks without any actual transaction taking place. One of the accused described what she called the suitcases used for bribes.
The number of suitcases bought was around 20 or 30, and in each of them we could fit around $200,000.
The face of the accused cannot be shown on the media.
The accused are in the court with their lawyers, but based on a section of Article 188 of Iran's criminal procedure, the media can make a report from the court proceedings, but cannot publish the name or identity of the accused or publish his or her picture. They can make a report as far as this article allows them to.
The lawyer for the main suspect in the case was not present and had quit, but had not officially informed the court of his decision. The representative of the prosecutor stated that the lawyer had quit because he believed that the money he had got from his client was dirty money. The main suspect chose to be silent until another lawyer is appointed. The judge stated that the next court is scheduled to be held on Saturday, March 17th, right before the Iranian New Year. On the second session of the big fraud case trial, the representative of Tehran prosecutor read out the indictment. One of the charges on the indictment for the second person accused was corruption on earth, a charge that can carry the death penalty. Arash Ghalatbari, Press TV, Tehran.
At least 11 workers have been killed in a fire in the Turkish city of Istanbul. The blaze engulfed a makeshift tent at the site of the construction of a mall. 15 workers were reportedly sleeping inside the tent, which was heated up by an electric heater. The blaze also spread to 2 adjacent tents. Rescuers have pulled out the bodies of 11 workers. Local officials say the fire might have been caused by a short circuit. Tens of thousands of anti-nuclear protesters have taken to the streets across the world, this to mark the first anniversary of the earthquake and tsunami that triggered a nuclear meltdown in Japan. Demonstrations took place in Germany, Switzerland, France, Spain, Belgium, Australia, and Taiwan. The protesters demand an end to the use of nuclear power. Protest rallies were also held in Japan. Tens of thousands held a moment of silence at a stadium in Koriyama in honor of the victims of the tragedy. They also demanded an end to nuclear energy in Japan and compensation for victims of the Fukushima atomic plant meltdown.
There were many memorial services held on Sunday all over Japan on the one-year anniversary of the country's earthquake and tsunami. In Tokyo, the government held a solemn memorial ceremony at the National Theater in Tokyo, where Emperor Akihito and Prime Minister Noda spoke. It was connected via live feed with memorial ceremonies, which took place in each of the disaster-affected prefectures. And at 2:46 in the afternoon, there was a minute of silence for the victims and condolences for their families. Nearly 16,000 died in the disaster, and 3,900 are still missing. About 80,000 residents remain displaced by the nuclear meltdown and may not be able to go back to their homes for years or even decades. We're here in the heart of Tokyo in Shibuya tonight on the first anniversary when a disaster struck the country. We asked people two questions: how they felt about the disaster and the way their government handled it. As you can see, things appear near normal.
Many people are still suffering, right? And many people have evacuated from Fukushima Prefecture and North Japan, right? So the government has to provide the exact information, right? Collect information to them, because they are still feel imbalanced, they feel still scared.
I wanted the government to consult the locals faster about the reconstruction plans.
There are still many other issues that officials will need to address, such as the 20 to 25 million tons of rubble left on the land, decontamination of radioactive materials, the displaced people who need better housing, compensation for the victims, the nuclear crisis, including safety at the nuclear plant. Catherine Makino, Press TV in Tokyo.
And that's a wrap for this edition of Press TV's World News. Stick around, I'll be back on the top of the hour with our news in brief. Goodbye for now.